Hello and welcome to World of Warbirds. I'm Brian Pierce. Please sign up at my Patreon to get episodes earlier, bonuses, to have a say on future content, and to interact with me and other Warbirders directly. But mainly you'll have the satisfaction of helping keep this podcast going. You can also toss me a tip via PayPal at WOWB17, or even just drop me a review. Thank you for your support. Now on to the show. Hello Warbirders. Welcome to turbo compounding, or squeezing every last drop of power out of the engine. As I said in the last one, if this is your first listen to the World of Warbirds podcast, you've arrived at a weird place. I usually profile an individual World War II warbird, but you've arrived in the middle of a series on World War II aero engines with these episodes. They all build on top of each other, so to catch up, you should go back and listen to the episodes on cylinders, superchargers and turbochargers, water methanol and nitrous oxide injection, and superfuels. Alright, so let's dive in. Today we're going to talk about a system that did not get much glory during the war, but became the savior of the big piston engine afterwards. That's right, we're talking about turbo compounding, a system designed to recover power that was otherwise just going out the exhaust stack and into the sky. Waste not, want not, especially when you're trying to push 60,000 pounds of aircraft across an ocean. Let's rewind for a second. We're talking turbo compounding. Don't get it mixed up with turbo supercharging. A turbo supercharger takes exhaust gases from the engine and uses them to compress the intake air, letting you cram more oxygen into the cylinders. And more air means more power. Great. But here's the catch. Even after that turbo has done its work, there's still a ton of energy left in that exhaust. It's hot, it's moving fast, and it's being completely wasted. Yes, you can get some boost by the use of ejector exhausts, which are a type of aircraft engine exhaust system designed to provide additional thrust through the ejector effect. They consist of short, carefully angled exhaust stacks that direct the hot gases rearward at high velocity. The high-velocity exhaust creates a small jet-like effect, adding a bit of forward thrust, sometimes called jet thrust or exhaust thrust. But even before you eject it, you can still get power out of this exhaust. Enter the blowdown turbine, or power recovery turbine, or PRT. Essentially, a second turbine placed downstream of the turbocharger but before the ejector exhausts. But instead of using this turbine to compress air, we hook it up to the crankshaft and use it to turn the propeller. Yes, we're literally mining the exhaust for more horsepower. This is the key difference. Turbo compounding doesn't just help the engine make more power. It actively adds horsepower back to the crankshaft. It's like the engine is burning its fuel, making its usual power, and then reaching into the trash to find some extra energy. Sometimes hundreds of horsepower to help turn the prop. Pretty clever, but pretty temperamental. And that explains the answer to the big question. If it could give you hundreds of free horsepower, why didn't we stick it on Spitfires and Thunderbolts and Superfortresses? Sadly, during World War II, nobody really got this working in combat aircraft. The technology existed, kind of, but there just wasn't enough time to make it work reliably on fighters or bombers. There was a lot that had to be worked out to make a system that routed white-hot flaming exhaust through multiple turbines and then tried to gear that back into a high RPM crankshaft. Firstly was complexity. These systems added weight, heat, and mechanical intricacy. For example, even to connect the low-torque, high-speed turbine rotation 2. The low speed, high torque output to drive the propeller without lurching required something called a fluid coupling. This is a system to transfer power without connecting the drive mechanically. Imagine a housing or a shell filled with oil. There's a power impeller on one side and an output impeller on the other side. The PRTs spin the power impeller, which spins the oil, which spins the output impeller. The two impellers aren't physically connected, so this would prevent lurching. At least that was the theory. To be honest, World War II fighters needed reliability, simplicity, and fast service and maintenance turnaround time between missions, and not 3 more tricky turbines to worry about. The second main problem was cooling issues. The PRTs ran really hot, and we're talking molten metal levels of exhaust gases. Later mechanics nicknamed the PRTs part recovery turbines, since the increased exhaust heat meant that sometimes the engines overheated and destroyed themselves. Managing that heat required some clever engineering that just wasn't mature during the war. And as much as I hate to admit it, the jets were coming. By the time turbo compounding was viable, the writing was on the wall. Jets were faster, simpler, in many ways, and the military wasn't about to invest in perfecting an old technology when the new technology was already breaking speed records. And yes, we will have more of Tanner's Just Jet series, where my active duty fighter pilot collaborator talks about what turns her turbine. Jets and turboprops. She just finished a beautiful model on the turboprop-powered OV-10 Bronco. Let's encourage her in the comments to give us an episode on that one. But after the war, when airlines were still running big radial-engined airliners like the Lockheed Super Constellation and the Douglas DC-7, turbo compounding got its chance. The engine that really put this into practice was the Wright R3350 duplex Cyclone, the same basic family that powered the B-29 Superfortress, but heavily evolved. In its turbo-compounded form, it had 3 power recovery turbines that added up to 500 horsepower back to the crankshaft, boosting total output to around 3,500 horsepower per engine. That's a 15% gain in power from just recovering energy that used to be wasted. So in the short term, turbo compounding helped piston airliners stay competitive during the late 40s and early 50s, bridging that awkward gap before the jetliners like the de Havilland Comet and Boeing 707 arrived. But once the jets took over, the complex and maintenance-hungry turbo compound engines faded fast. Their day in the sun was brief, but they were a perfect example of engineers trying to wring every last ounce of efficiency out of a technology that had already given us so much. So, I think we've hit the end of the line in this series, which was to be about piston engines. Although I've never really covered carburetors versus fuel injection. But in the meantime, keep your mixture rich, your prop spinning, and your exhaust doing something useful. Until next time.